Hello and salve, discipuli. My name is Magister Costello, and today we're going through Latin for Children A, Chapter 14. Chapter 14. In Chapter 14, we go over the vocabulary of deo, teneo, habeo, iubio, ageo, agricola, nota, poeta, incola, and ager. These are the verbs, if you notice, look a little different because they're second conjugation verbs. Now, students often are like, oh, conjugations, what are conjugations? Oh, conjugations are simply just different ways to sort and order words. The reason why this gets kind of confusing is because we don't really sort and order our words in Latin. In English, I mean. But in Latin, they ordered their words. And how do they order them? By letters. So first conjugation words were sorted by the stem vowel A. It's quite as simple as that. So if you notice that amo, amas, amat, amamus, amatis, amant, there's a stem vowel A stuck right in the middle. But second conjugation verbs, quite simply, are ordered by the stem vowel E. It's not that. And in doing so, you'll notice that you'll see a lot of E's in these principal parts here. I will also notice here that a lot of the second conjugation verbs that we learn, as a side note, can be irregular in the third and fourth principal parts. So just keep that in mind. But in the first principal part and second principal part, they keep pretty regular. So we have the deo, which means I see, teneo, which means I hold, habeo, which means I have, iubio, which is I order, and ageo, which is I increase. Now they give you more first declension words here, nouns, agricola, nota, poeta, incola, ager. Now these first declension nouns here, not ager, but the four of those, agricola, nota, poeta, and incola, are actually irregular first declension nouns. They're irregular, which means that they are masculine nouns in a first declension feminine organizational box. We've talked about how first declension words are usually feminine. These are the exceptions. So agricola means farmer, and these have to do with natural gender. And ancient Rome was a masculine society. It doesn't define our society now. A lot of students have difficult wrapping their minds around gender, and women can be farmers too. Women were farmers in ancient Rome too. It's just that the language component of that is masculine, and the technical farmer on a field would have been a masculine person. Farmer. So this is why agricola, stelo, poeta, and incola are all masculine words. They're all masculine professions. So do not describe this sweaty masculine farmer as a feminine person, because it's not. In ancient Roman it was not, and that's how we define our gender for this language. Remember, this language is not a modern language. This is an ancient language, and they still had gender ideals according to those ancient ideals, not our current modern ones. So they give you the four exceptions to the rule for first declension. And then we have ager, agree, field. One thing to note with words that are associated with the ground and nature, they had to do with deities in ancient Rome. Most of them are actually feminine. We have, most of them are actually feminine, like terra, land. And all those kind of associated with those words. They are usually feminine because they have to do with gods and goddesses and the deities. spirits, and etc. that are associated with ancient Rome. But here we have ager, agree, field, which is a masculine word, which is an exception. But because it has to do with farming, I believe that's why it's masculine. But in the case of the students, I actually just teach that field is a masculine word because it's just grammatically that way, not naturally that way. But we could make it a natural gender type of situation here. Sorry, I'm getting into nuances. Then we have a review vocabulary. Pugno, to fight, I fight. O pugno, I attack. Neko, I kill. Ambulo, I walk. We have pugno and opugno here. This is when I start talking about the nuances when it comes to Latin words and when prefixes change a word and the difference between I fight and I attack. Because you get a fight without actually attacking, right? Is a nuance. Neko is another word, and then ambulo. Ambulo is a very important scientific word. I always tell the story of going to the hospital and handing a pamphlet that says ambulatory on there, which means I walk. That I'm a walking person in the hospital, ambulatory. It's a very scientific word and a very important word to learn, especially if you're going into the medical field. So on the next page, is the story that you learn. It has very basic words. Remember, I encourage the kids in their notebooks to box the ere in videre, the infinitive, so that they can really just see, oh, this is an infinitive. It means to see. I always talk about infinitives. Always open up that dialogue of that infinitives go beyond parsing. They don't have a person or tense associated with them. They're infinitive. They go on and on and on. To see. They are the ultimate verb. So they have, and then you start noticing here that they have in the story is parva puella, which is small girl. I always have them box the endings to these words so that the kids can see that the endings match here, both in gender and in tense. So the grammar lesson for this week is conjugations, second conjugations. We talk more about what conjugating a verb is and declining a noun. This is something that is very hard for students to comprehend and is something to be very patient about. What is conjugating and what is declining? So I actually take my time on it and remind them repeatedly over the years, because students will still ask in the 8th grade what conjugating a verb is and what declining of noun is. It is just how it goes. So now we have, we talk about conjugating a verb and second conjugations for those verbs. The definition for conjugation is the listing of all the forms of a verb. So specifically go through all the endings of a present tense verb in the second conjugation. And then declining is the listing of the forms of a noun, specifically first, second, third, fourth, fifth, etc. And then for and then we talk about, the 4 masculine first declension nouns. Now I have already talked to kids about this with these nouns. I've already mentioned it when we went over first declension nouns that they're all feminine and there's exceptions to it, masculine. When we first started going over examples of gender and translation, but go over many examples of normal examples and exceptions examples in your class. Have whiteboards and have students write down example sentences again and again and again and again. And just hit on gender. You don't have to have them parse out everything, but you can just hit on gender here. And the lack of gender when you are translating and parsing out verbs and nouns. Second conjugation, the endings are all the same for the most part. They just have that E in the middle instead of an A. So, especially for the present, imperfect, and future. And so in that case, just tell the kids that they do not need to worry. They do not need to learn any new endings for right now. They just have to learn the new stem vowel that's stuck in the middle. So have them sort out a bunch of verbs. If they have a notebook, you know, oh, this verb is first conjugation and this verb is second conjugation. And how can we tell if it's first or second? Oh, look at the infinitive. The infinitive says ERE instead of ARE. So that means it's second conjugation. It's a process, but when they start recognizing this, it will go slow at first, but as they do it more and more, it'll get faster and faster and faster. So I encourage you to have them sort out those words. Okay, I usually for the worksheet page, you know, they're doing the exact same thing. I have them always box the endings for these words. One thing, the vocabulary word agree. Now, this is something that is important as well because agree is where you put the endings on, not ager. You always go by the genitive singular. So we kind of touch on this, that it's AGR, not AGER, when you're putting the endings onto this root word. So we start talking about stems and finding the stems of a noun. And for these words, you do not go off of the nominative singular. You always go off of the genitive singular. And so I have them on their vocabulary page, box that genitive singular AGR. And then we go in class and we put the endings on AGR. And then I give them other further examples on top of that. I can't think of any on top of my head, but I give them other examples for them to do in that. This is something that they will continue to learn in future years, but they're just starting it now, and they might not understand why, but you can start them thinking about it. Put those seeds down. Derivatives. You know, kids sometimes have a hard time conceptualizing derivatives, especially if the definition of a Latin noun and verb has the same derivatives associated with it. But just keep at it, go over the definitions, even have them break apart and underline the Latin stem in the Latin root in all of these derivatives. And yes, that should be the lesson for chapter 14. And yeah, with that agree, that is why we have agriculture for the derivatives. So especially for agriculture and the derivatives for agricultural, so agriculture and agricultural, have them underline the AGR there and have them notice that it's the same as the genitive singular and not the nominative singular. Okay, thank you. That's chapter 14. And I wish you a good week. Merry Christmas.